just give everybody a few minutes to jump on here. And we are going to talk about dogs. We're going to talk about how they think, how they retain information, how they retain positive reinforcement, how they retain stress, so on and so forth. I think it's a very interesting topic that actually people don't know nearly as much as they think they know. And I'm going to give you my perspective on it. And I'm going to give you my perspective on how we still don't know. We still don't know. So I look forward to it. Just give me a second. Let me light my cigar, and we can move forward from there. Okay. So I see some people jumping in here as per usual. Let me know if you guys have any problems hearing me or seeing me, and we'll go from there. So let's talk a little bit about how dogs retain information and how they retain good information and, let's say, negative information. So let's say positive reinforcement, negative reinforcement. Um, it's a very interesting topic that we all don't know enough about. We think we know. There's people on the internet that pretend they know, but I guarantee you we don't know enough about it. Oof, this one's not running properly. Anyways, the reason why I say that we don't really know, and I'm gonna give you my reasoning, is because you will only really find this information out in a true and deep way when you trial your dog on the competition field. And the reason I say that is because that is one of the few places that you are going with a burden of performance, right? When you have no ability to positively reinforce your dog or negatively reinforce your dog. You don't have any tools. You don't have any ability to correct your dog. You don't have any ability to reward your dog. It's just you and your dog out there, and you have to get through all the exercises that you need to get through. And you don't really understand, right, how dogs retain and absorb information until you put yourself in that situation repeatedly over and over and over again. So I would say the people that probably understand this the best are people that have been performing at a high level in dog sport for a long period of time. So what we see, and I'm going to speak of it about it from a dog sport perspective, because obviously, I train pet dogs, I do the protection dogs, I do all of that stuff as well. But it's different because when you have a pet dog, when you have a protection dog, when you have a police dog, you always have your tools to some degree or other, right? You always have the ability to reward the dog, correct the dog, so on and so forth. You're never really in a situation for any prolonged period of time where you have a high burden of performance and no ability to give the dog that input. Whereas in dog sport, you're on the field, you don't really have much that you can do to influence the dog. You, especially in a sport like IGP, where we have three separate phases: tracking, obedience, protection, right? Three different opportunities for the dog to show us what he has learned, what he has retained. Three different opportunities for the dog to not do what you want him to do, right? And for him to completely get away with it. That only happens in a sport like IGP. You cannot influence the dog. And if you do, there is a significant penalty, right? So you have to be very passive as a handler and not perceptibly influence the dog whatsoever, right? Especially if you want to be at a high level, if you want to win. So I would say that the people that truly understand this are people that have accomplished that, and especially more importantly, people that have stayed at that level for a long period of time or have done it over and over again. That is where the rubber meets the road, because it is certainly possible to take a dog, especially a young dog, and accomplish maybe like the dog's title. So I see this all the time. Decent trainer, has good training, like the dog, has really nice foundation, really nice training, obedience, tracking, protection. They go out there, they earn their IGP1, IGP2, IGP3, and then blah, nothing. They consistently fail in the competitions, especially the higher level competitions, especially the championships, right? And they do it over and over and over again, and they just can't seem to get that consistency together to a level necessary to win. And then conversely, you'll see trainers out there that maybe they're not so flashy. The dog maybe isn't as flashy as that other trainer's dog. It doesn't look as good, but they're consistently at that high level. You'll see this a lot with, not a lot, but you'll see this sometimes with, some older handlers. They're like in their like 60s, 70s, and you're like, it's the work is very pedestrian in the sense of like you don't have a wow factor watching the dog, but at the same time, they're always in the hunt. They're always at that level where they're fighting for that top 5 spot. And you wonder, okay, well, this trainer's got, their dog clearly has a lot of joy and enthusiasm in the work. They're clearly, you would say objectively, just based on seeing different exercises that the dog is doing, you would say, wow, like this trainer's better than that trainer. Yet that trainer is consistently at that level. What is going on? Why is the trainer with more pedestrian work at that level, right? Because he understands how dogs retain information a lot better than the trainer with the flashy dog, right? It's when we're talking about training dogs, there's 2 things that you must consider. The actual training of the thing, training the dog to do the thing, very important, right? How you do it is very important, right? And it has a huge impact on the longevity of the behavior. But then retention, how does he continue to do it? Do we see a decay in the quality of the behavior? The more behaviors we string together without positive or negative reinforcement, what's the rate of decay? In many cases, what you'll see is like these, flashier trainers, they'll come in and they'll maybe have like a really nice phase. Like they'll have an obedience phase that's really good. Like the dog will do all the obedience. It'll be a 90s obedience. But then they'll come on the field afterwards for protection and the dog won't out. Or the dog will be super loose. Or the dog will fail tracking. Right? And this can happen to anybody. And it does literally happen to probably every trainer out there to some degree. But to some people, it just happens all the time. And they're never in that hunt for that top 5 spot. Right? They're never at that championship level. They're never going to win a world championship. So the difference between the people at the top level and the people that are maybe in the middle or lower down is the ability to understand how dogs retain information. And that is the title of this live, the razor edge of victory, because the razor edge of victory it's literally that. You're on a razor's edge between your dog completing exercise and not completing an exercise. Your dog making a huge mistake or a minor mistake. And those are the difference. Those are the differences between finishing number 1, 2, and 3 or number 7, 8, and 9, right? And that's a big difference in placement. And we'll talk a little bit about some of the things that I have observed. And here's why I say we don't know enough, because there's no one that knows enough when it comes to this topic, because there's very few in the grand scheme of things, dog trainers that actually go out there and compete at a high level for any length of time, for any period of time, right? So the first thing I'm going to talk about when it comes to this topic, let me just see what we got here so I don't fall too far behind. Hello, hello, hello. Do I need a video editor? No, I don't. Thank you for all. Christina says, thank you for all your online courses. Thank you. When is a good idea to show your dog a new decoy? When he's doing well, when he has a good foundation with his existing decoy. Lori says, love has watching him work with his dogs. He definitely knows his stuff. Thank you, Lori. Siege Canine says, congrats, Has. Want to say thank you for all your knowledge. Currently studying all your videos and courses so I can continue to improve my training and handling of working dogs. Thank you. Well, you're welcome very much. Okay, so let's talk a little bit more about this topic. Let's talk about some general things that I've observed, okay? So what you have to understand is when we speak about retention, so when we speak about training, the vast majority of dogs, especially when we're speaking about a subset of dogs, so let's say, working dogs, right? Let's say you're training for IGP, you've got a nice working line, German Shepherd, or you've got a Belgian Malinois. The same rules apply when you're training these dogs, right? Some dogs maybe need more of something over another thing, but at the end of the day, the same general rules apply, and good trainers can typically train both types of dogs, and different lines obviously have different types. So there's a lot of different subsets within the subset, right? But trainers, good trainer can generally train any one of those dogs to a good level of understanding when it comes to all the basic exercises in tracking, obedience, and protection. Now, where things get really different is how the dog brings the training onto the competition field and performs on the competition field, right? That's where the rubber really can meet the road and really changes from dog to dog. One of the biggest impacts I find is a dog's general temperament. So, for instance, I'll speak about my personal dogs. Gage, okay? All the training is my training. There was a ton of arousal, and you guys can go back and watch Gage's, the videos of Gage training as a puppy, which is super, fantastic because, he's a dog that went to the World Cup, right? So you can see him all the way from puppy to the World Cup. His training from the very beginning had tons of arousal. I put so much arousal into all of his training. Everything he did had so much arousal. He was always like basically revving to the highest level, right? Hyper aroused in all the behavior. I literally did it like that, right? From the beginning. So it's pretty much like endemic in everything he does. He's been classically conditioned to feel that way when he does those things, right? For those of you that don't understand classical conditioning, look it up. I'm not going to get into it right now. But he's been classically conditioned to have that emotion when he performs those behaviors, right? So when we move onto the trial field, right, with the dog, fairly reasonable to say that almost everything he does in the trial has an element of arousal in it. His obedience has an element of arousal. The protection, even the tracking, he's fairly aroused. He's actually a lot more aroused in tracking than you would typically see a dog be, right? But initially, when I began to trial Gage, I ran into a problem where he would get really loose on me. He'd start looking away. He'd start, checking out on me a lot. And what I found was it was his nerves that were doing that, right? Because he tends to be a little bit more on the nervy end of the spectrum. He's a bit more of a reactive dog. He's the dog that somebody appears walking down the sidewalk, he's got all his hackles up and he's growling and, he notices different things much more. Reactive dogs, they tend to notice things that are different much more. They key in on that, right? And while it creates arousal in the dog, it makes the dog distracted. So he's the type of dog that when I get him to a different spot, right, he's a lot more like wanting to look around. He's a lot more like, thinking about more than just the one thing that I need him to focus on. So that when I would go to trial with him and I would start chaining behaviors together for long periods of time without reinforcement, he would become looser and looser and looser and more progressively distracted, right? Than say another dog that, let's say, clients of mine, friends of mine that had dogs that were more social, that were more easygoing, that had the type of dog that could kind of go everywhere and like you don't really see much of a change in their behavior. Those dogs handle trialing much differently. They wouldn't go as loose as fast because the environment for them was not particularly stimulating. They're not dogs that were easily stimulated, distracted, concerned with the environment. They were dogs that were, environmentally very, very solid. And I'm not speaking about the dog's ability to go up and down a set of steps. I'm talking about like just generally, especially when it comes to people being around other dogs, so on and so forth. Whereas Gage was very, very concerned with those things, right? Like he would notice those things much more than the other dogs. So needless to say, in trial, when the reinforcement all went away, you would see a degradation, a decay in the behavior much faster than with those other dogs that didn't have that temperament predisposition, right? So what did we do to fix that issue? Well, there's a lot of things that I did, but I'll keep it simple. What I did was I realized, okay, we have a problem that dogs, what you have to understand about dogs is they're very contextual, right? A lot of people think that the dog notices just like a small thing and that's what changes everything. So for instance, again, I've spoken about this before, I'll speak about it again. A lot of people think, oh, my dog knows if he's wearing his e-collar. And in many cases, it's not true. Your dog is not e-collar wise. He does not know if he's wearing his e-collar. What he knows is if he felt the e-collar, right? I want you to think about that. He knows if he feels the e-collar. So a lot of handlers, right, they'll go to a new place, dog will be distracted, they'll bump him on the e-collar, and he'll be like, oh yeah, okay, I'm supposed to be doing this, and he'll reorient himself, and then he'll work. Well, what happens in a trial? You don't have an e-collar. You can't reorient the dog. You can't say, hey, buddy, knock it off. Focus on me. We're doing this thing together, right? Can't do that. But there's other things that you can do, right? There's other things that you can do. You can create the expectation. You can remove the dog's ability to recognize or think he recognizes a context. So let me be specific. Let's say my dog, every day I took him, I'm sitting out here looking at my front yard. Let's say every day I trained him in my backyard and I used all my tools on the dog, right? He got his ball, he got it, he felt the e-collar, leash, whatever you want to think about. It happened in the backyard. Every day when I train him, it happens in the backyard. But in the front yard, occasionally I'd come to the front yard. And the front yard looks different than the backyard, right? It's a different field. The trees are in different spots. The grass is a little different, whatever. And in the front yard, he never got any of those things, right? Now, I'm gonna say this. Let's say in the front yard, he still wore his e-collar. I still had a ball on me, okay? But he never got them in the front yard, only in the backyard. What do you think would happen to the performance in the backyard as opposed to the front yard? Well, in the front yard, over time, over a few repetitions, right, the dog would become very wise to the fact that nothing's going to happen good or bad out here. There's not going to be any kind of positive or negative reinforcement. And you would see a steep decline in the behavior in the front yard, right? Now, you think to yourself, okay, he's wearing his e-collar. I have the ball on me. What is it about this situation he's noticing that's creating a steep decline in the reliability of the behavior? It must be more than just the lack. Everybody, we as humans, we focus on what we think about. So we're like, oh my God, we're in the trial. He's not wearing his e-collar. I don't have the ability to correct him. He must know it, right? And unless you're a bad trainer, right, there's no reason he should know it, right? And by a bad trainer, I mean you were super obvious that the e-collar was how you delivered the negative reinforcement to him, right? Which is, by the way, side note, why I prefer to use the e-collar. Everyone's like, why do you use the e-collar if your dog is trained? Because, dummy, a leash is much more noticeable to a dog than an e-collar is. It's much easier to hide an e-collar than it is a leash from the dog's notice. You think the dog doesn't freaking notice a giant piece of string attached to his neck? Of course he does, right? It's much easier to fade the e-collar from the dog's perception than it is to fade a giant rope attached to the dog's neck, right? It's the same with the stick and all these other things that people use. You can use them, and I listen, the more tools you have, the better, in my opinion. But keep in mind, it's much easier for the dog to perceive those things than it is a collar around his neck, assuming the dog wears collars all the time, which mine do, right? So, anyways, getting back to it. What is it about this that he is noticing that is creating the decline in performance? And now we start to think about what. Now, take my analogy of the front yard and the backyard and move it to a trial. What is it about the trial atmosphere that the dog is perceiving, right, that he does not perceive in a training situation? And there's a lot of things. Applause, right? Could be the amount of people. That one's the hardest for me, by the way. The amount of people, crowds, spectators, very hard for me, right? Because I don't have a big club that I train with. I train with a small club, a small group of people. So it's very hard to duplicate the amount of people that you're going to run into in a trial, right? So there's all sorts of things that are present in a trial that are not present in your training environment, right? So that is why, in many cases, you will see an immediate decay in performance, especially the more experience the dog gets, because he's recognizing these things as being markers of no reinforcement incoming, no positive reinforcement, no negative reinforcement, right? And that's the difference between the razor's edge of victory. Now, there's two things that affect like I said, the ultimate outcome, right? Now, if you're a good trainer and you're training your dog from the beginning, understanding that you will be trialing your dog, you're going to install certain, let's say, behavior and emotional predispositions, and you're gonna attach those things together, right, in your training. So for instance, I went back to Gage, right? I attached in all his training, which is why I was able to be successful on the higher level with him, not because of his talent, but because of that foundation where there was so much arousal attached to all the behaviors that even if he was a little nervous or a little concerned with the environment, the arousal overwhelmed it and made him a little bit more numb to it and created a little bit of tunnel vision that, with minimal reinforcement and some games from me, helped him perform at the highest level no matter what, right? But for instance, with a dog like Chico, I didn't put the foundation, right? I didn't put the foundation. So the challenge with him is I don't have that foundation. Now, over time, I believe that you can change the foundation, right? Over time, with a lot of really, really consistent, strong training, you can change the foundation, right? In the sense that the dog defaults. Like already this year as opposed to last year with Chico, like there's much more, there's more dog there. There's more arousal there. There's certain behavioral predispositions he has that he didn't have last year, and it's just from a lot of classical conditioning that I have done, where I've attached specific outcomes to behavior. So let's say, again, think about it from this perspective. And this really applies to those of you that have Belgian Malinois, right? And I find that Chico is actually a little bit like a Belgian Malinois in the way he thinks. Gage, not so much. But, and what I mean is Belgian Malinois are very quick to pick up on patterns and classically conditioned associations, right? So let's say, for instance, I'm doing a heeling pattern. So I heel, and every time I turn left, I nick the dog on the electric collar on a high level, right? So I'm walking, and let's say there's 3 left turns in my heel pattern. And every left turn, nick, high level, nick, high level. After, I would say, maybe 10 to 15 repetitions of doing that, you are going to turn left, and that dog, regardless of whether you nick him or not, is going to show the physical and emotional response of being nicked, right? You're going to turn left, and whatever he does when you nick him, he's going to do it, regardless of whether you nick him or not, because he has that classically conditioned association between that physical movement and that outcome of getting nicked. The same thing with, let's say, you gave him a ball at a specific spot every single time, and you created a classically conditioned association that I get my ball in this moment. Every time I turn right in the heeling, I get my ball. Every time I turn left in the heeling, I get nicked. You do that. Let's say you put 15, 20 reps in. You do that, right? You are going to see the dog act as if the thing happened even when it doesn't happen. Now, of course, the more you do it without giving him the outcome, the quicker that is going to decay. But now I want you to think about preparing a dog for trial and how understanding that can help you in the preparation for trial. Every physical movement you do matters, right? Every physical movement you do matters. And especially when you're doing dog sport, you know the way that you're going to move. You know, to some degree, the things you're going to do. Even for sports like PSA, where you're going to have to do different exercises, there are fundamental things that you are going to do guaranteed. And if you understand those things, you can begin to classically condition associations between those things and specific outcomes, right? Now, this applies to those of you that are training a pet, right? This applies to those of you that have a police dog or a protection dog or whatever it is. You can create expectations, and the more things, the more precursors that you can do to something, right? To ensure that the dog goes into the right emotion and prepares himself mentally to do the thing, the better outcome you're going to get. So I'll give you an example. Before I track my dog, I always do the same thing. I take him out of the crate or the car. I put the tracking leash on. It's 30 feet long, right? And I put it on in a very specific way. I then walk him in a very specific way to the flag. I then put him in a down. I then pick him up. I go and I check in with a judge, whether they're there or not. And then I go to the track and I set him up in the exact same way. All those precursors, no matter where I go, whether I'm on a soccer field, a hay field, I'm with 30 friends, I'm with nobody. The dog knows every time those preconditions are met, we are tracking. Side of the highway, 20 people around, nobody around. We are tracking. Guaranteed. He knows it. So by the time I give him the order to track, he's already in track mode. He's already there. I don't have to be like, oh, my dog thought it was protection. It's like, no, he didn't freaking think it was protection, right? Like, I guarantee you, if I went on the IGP field and there was 6 blinds out and a flag on the field, he would still track on the IGP field instead of thinking about protection, because I've met all the preconditions for tracking, right? This is a big thing that you have to understand, whether you're doing obedience, protection, tracking, creating those preconditions. And the more that you can recreate those preconditions in a trial, the more likely it is that you are going to have success in the trial, right? Let me get to some of these topics again. Full power kennel. Yes, full power kennel. My friend got his Rottweiler puppy at 2 months. He was diagnosed with congenital problem, bilateral hock. Everyone tells me how to choose a puppy, but no one mentions how to avoid these issues. Well, you avoid these issues by going to a breeder that health tests their dogs, and also one that will honor their health guarantees. Because sometimes, no matter how much health testing there is, issues can happen. But when you're dealing with a breeder that honors their health guarantees, then it's still sad, but they'll take the puppy back and replace it, right? All right. You have said German Shepherds are better because good ones are easier to find. So my question is, are they a better breed or just easier to find? Oh, they're a better breed. They're the best breed for working. There's no comparison between a good German Shepherd and any of the other breeds you mentioned. And I say that as someone that's handled every one of those other ones and trained them. CL says, good to see you on a live again. Spoke with my friend about the rot that turned on the handler from the last live. Possibly having more of a breathing issue, being extra aware when training, and it helped. Awesome. Happy to hear it. Off-leash hikes and IGP training says, so my IGP dog is always more powerful and open on a brand new field than our primary training field when he has learned and still learns 99% of the exercises. Is that unusual? Yeah, it's extremely unusual. It could be that there's too much rewarding. There could be that there's too much pressure. It could be that, on a new field, he has nerves affect. So here's another thing I've observed. Nerves affect dogs differently. For some dogs, it makes them less. It makes them a little more like closed in, a little more concerned, a little more worried. For other dogs, nerves actually spike their arousal, and they channel their slight discomfort in being in a new place into the work, and it actually makes it a little better, and it makes them a little more reliable, right? So in IGP, which is a 3-phase sport, here's something I've observed. For those people that kind of have maybe let's say, a more sensitive dog, a little bit more of a nervy dog, right? And Malinois handlers, check in with me on this one, right? What you'll find is that oftentimes the dog will have a fire obedience, like really good, like 95 plus in obedience, but then the dog will bitch out in protection, because while that nerve served you when the dog was working with you and the dog was able to kind of seek refuge in you from the nerve, when the dog had to go out on his own and deal with a strange man, who was not acting like his favorite decoy acts, and who, is in a strange place, that's where the nerves kind of negatively impacted the dog. And negatively impacting the dog can be a couple of different things. It could be the dog completely going into avoidance, or it could be the dog's adrenaline getting stimulated to such a high level that he refuses to out, right? And you see it kind of go both ways. The No Pills Man says, are there some dogs that e-collars are not well suited for, or do you find it to be universally beneficial? That's like saying, are there some dogs that a leash is not well suited for? An e-collar is a leash. It's a wireless leash. This is what people don't understand. I need I need you guys to really understand this. An e-collar is not a stop sign. It's not a giant electrical hammer that you apply to behaviors you don't like. An e-collar is many things. An e-collar is a green light, it is a red light, it is a turn signal, and it can be a giant hammer if you want it to be, right? This is what people don't understand. And this is where this trope about, oh, some dogs can't handle an e-collar. Yeah, some dogs can't handle being shocked into oblivion. You're right, right? That's not what you should be doing with an e-collar. And that's not what I do with an e-collar, which is why I always laugh when people are like, oh, do it without the e-collar. Well, how about you do it with an e-collar? How about you just do it, right? And when you can, maybe we'll talk. And if you could, you wouldn't say that because you would know how I'm using the e-collar in that specific circumstance, right? Matt G says, what's your cue you give your dogs that lets them know it's time to start obedience? Well, there's actually quite a few cues. But one of the cues I give to my dog is I tell him to lie down and I look him in the eyes and he gets active with me and I heel onto the field and check in with the judge, right? Luciano Lopez says, congratulations for the championship. Have you bred or do you plan to breed with Chico? I do. Stay tuned. Stay tuned. There may be some news about that in the future, but I have nothing to say about it right now. Okay. So yeah, one of the things that I do when I'm done with a competition, and those of you that are in my Patreon, those of you that are in my online courses, especially those of you that took my trial prep course, you really will understand what I'm about to say here. Is I do some very important sessions after the trial. Everybody thinks about the sessions before the trial as being the most important. All the things that you're going to do to prepare your dog for competition. But every time you climb a mountain, whether you fell off the mountain or you summited, you must then think about the next climb in front of you, right? So for me, yeah, I won German Shepherd Nationals. Fantastic. I'm Canadian champion. Awesome. Super happy, super grateful. All praise be to God. But all that being said, my real goal is to win the world championship. And I've already, like, literally, as the judge was reading me my critique on my last phase and I knew I won the Canadian championship, I was already thinking about all the things that I had to do to win the world championship. And it's quite a mountain to climb, let me tell you. But the sessions and the training that you do after your trial are arguably more important even than the training you do before the trial, because your dog just had an experience that you have to address. You have to address what happened. We went to a place, we did obedience, tracking, and protection, and nothing happened. No positive, no negative. Arguably, you could say a dog getting a sleeve in getting to bite the sleeve in protection is positive, but everybody has a different outlook on that. Other than that, you have to address what happened, and if you don't address what happened in your next trainings, I know I'm not going to get into the details of that because that wouldn't be fair to all the people that are in my trial prep course. You will have a problem, and I'm telling you guys, the key to success and what separates the trainers that win at the higher levels and the ones that lose are the people that truly understand and truly think about trial prepping in the right way. I'm also going to tell you another thing. Every dog is a little different in how they translate the training that happens on the training field to the trial. Some dogs are listen, for some dogs, it's not complicated at all. You're super consistent in your training, right? You go on the trial field, he's going to trial the same way you train. It's just that simple. And those dogs are, honestly, I haven't been blessed with one yet. I cannot wait. You give me one of those, and watch out, world. I'm coming, right? Because that's fantastic. In many cases, that's not the case. Especially the more trials they go through, they start to recognize that they're in a trial, and immediately you see an impact on the overall performance of the dog. And that's why it's so important, like I said, to address what happened in a trial after the trial, and then leading up to the trial, prepare the dog for what he's going to see there and try and get ahead of his thought process. Think about all the preconditions that he's going to run into in the trial and attempt to duplicate that as best as you can in the training. And a lot of people are thinking just simply like, oh, there's a crowd of people. Well, let me go and train around a crowd of people. Okay, that's good. Oh, there's a judge on the field. Let me practice that. Okay, that's good, right? But there's more. There's so much more. There's so much more that happens that the dog perceives, right? Here's another thing that I've learned that dogs perceive, right? And this is humans as well, right? When we talk about making an impression on a dog, this is important because when we're training a dog, we want to make an impression, right? We want to make an impression such that it lasts and it creates performance that lasts past the impression, right? If I have to give my dog, let's say I gave my dog a ball for doing something really well and I rewarded him with the ball, but the very next time we went out, he acted as if he never got a positive reinforcement for that thing, right? What the hell is the point of giving him the ball the first time, right? Maybe after 5 times he'll act like he got a ball there and show that the effect of that repeated positive reinforcement. But if after like 10, 20, 30 times of him getting a ball there, he didn't show the appropriate reaction, I would say, well, that positive reinforcement in that context is completely useless. But one thing I have noticed is dogs perceive negative reinforcement much more than they receive positive reinforcement. Negative reinforcement is much more powerful than positive reinforcement. The dog retains it much longer, especially when the negative reinforcement is very high. He retains it much longer than he retains any kind of positive reinforcement, right? But the other thing that you have to think about, and this is one thing I've learned, is the more you do something, the less likely it is for the dog to remember the reinforcement in that specific context. So, let's say, for instance, I did healing, I did 3 motion exercises, and I did 3 dumbbells. And I positively reinforced my dog, and let's say negatively reinforced my dog for all of it. The healing, the 3 motion exercises, and the 3 dumbbell exercises, right? That's 7 instances of positive reinforcement in a session. How much do you think, especially in the beginning, he's retained what happened? How much do you think he's going to remember? Oh yeah, like in healing, I got a reinforcement, a positive reinforcement. Oh, I got a positive reinforcement for my sit motion. No, I mean you've already got like 4 more after that, 5 more after that, right? He's not going to retain that nearly as much as if maybe you just reinforced him twice in that entire session, right? Think about that. Negative reinforcement works the same way. The more you do it, the less of an impression there is. So let's say you utilized negative reinforcement through the entire session. And you're like, okay, I think he's going to be good because like I did 10 things and I gave him that negative reinforcement for all 10 of those different things that we did. Is he really? Maybe he'll be good for like the last 2 things. I guarantee you he probably doesn't really remember the first 5 things that happened, right? The dog does not perceive things that happen in great profusion. And it's the same with humans, by the way, right? It's the same with humans. So let's say I'm a teacher, okay? I'm trying to teach you something, and I'm an abusive teacher, okay? I hit you a lot. So let's say we had to do like 20 different things, and in those 20 different things that we had to do, I hit you 15 times, all right? How much of that entire process, right, are you going to retain like, oh yeah, here he hit me and here he hit me and here? 15 times is too many. Now, if I just got you twice, I guarantee you, or even once, especially once, you're going to be like, oh, that's the thing. That's the thing. I can't screw this one up. I can't screw this one up. He's going to get me, right? Versus 15 times I got you. So you have to think about that. You have to think about that when we speak about making an impression, right? With the positive or with the negative. The more you do it, the less impact it has. I hope I'm stimulating you guys mentally to think a little bit, right? About how dogs retain information, how how much it works. Now, for certain dogs, right? There are some dogs, I call them, they're more sensitive, right? They retain and act upon incidences of positive and negative reinforcement, especially negative reinforcement, for much longer, right? So there's some dogs, let's say, I had a dog recently that I was working with. He liked to look away from the handler in the healing, right? He liked to look away from the handler a lot in the healing, right? So I caught him really, really high for looking away the one time, rewarded him, right? After that, every time thereafter, after that, for like, I don't know, 5, 6 sessions, there was nothing and he would not look away, right? It was so impactful. There's other dogs, you do that, the very next session, right? They might still take a chance and look away. It's all about how dogs perceive pressure. It's one of my problems with Chico, by the way, right? Super physically tough dog. Like the toughest dog I've ever had physically. It's weird. Like the amount of like the people don't believe me when I tell them like what the stimulation is on for just basic negative reinforcement. It is on the maximum at all times. He just doesn't perceive it very much. Like he's just physically really tough. Whereas Gage is definitely significantly more sensitive than him. I don't even have it close to that on Gage's when it comes to Gage, right? So these are all things that you have to understand, right? When you're working with a dog, when you're preparing a dog for trial. Now, when we speak about pet dog training, when we speak about pet dog training, you guys should start to see here, right? Because I see a lot of pet dog people nagging their dogs continuously for the same things over and over and over again. And it's like, you need to stop nagging your dog because your dog doesn't remember all the tiny little nags that you've done. You need to make a big impression if he already understands what he's supposed to do and what he's not supposed to do. And when you make that big impression, you don't have to constantly give him this feedback. And you're stuck in this feedback loop with the dog. Always, always, come on, let's do it this way, this way, this way, this way, right? Tap, 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 low stim, tap, 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 tap. On the e-collar, I see that, or half-ass pops on the pinch collar, all this kind of nonsense. It's a pet dog, right? Or pet obedience. I don't nag my dog for pet obedience. That's really not the point, right? I just need you to do it and I need you to do it reliably. How do we make reliability? Well, first we teach the dog what the desired behavior is, and then we reinforce that desired behavior such that it becomes reliable enough that we do not have to continuously reinforce it, right? It's the same for punishing undesirable behavior, right? When you punish undesirable behavior, you do not have to continue to punish it because you effectively create a enormous reduction in the incidences of the behavior, or you create ultimately, if you do it the right way, an extinction where the behavior just does not come back, right? And I think a lot of people struggle with that because they continuously nag, and the nagging does have some impact. Nagging has some impact, and they're confused and they think, okay, well, this impact that the nagging is having means that what I'm doing is working, and it's not, right? All you're doing is you're actually desensitizing your dog to the information that you're giving him or her, and that's why over time it gets worse. The no pill man says people rip me a new, I'm not going to use that word, um, for saying that e-collars are universally good for off-leash freedom. I don't know what their issue is, assuming the dog clearly understands how to escape and avoid it. Yeah, well, like I said, most people are idiots and they don't really know how an e-collar works. So I'm not surprised, right? What else do we do? Watching you compete at Worlds will be so cool. I'm pumped for the journey. So am I. Hopefully it goes well. Sue Seep says, Canine Archie says, hi from Minnesota. Well, hello, Archie. Thanks to his breeding and training from Shield Canine. Well, I hope you enjoy him. You got some. Josh says, congratulations, Has. Thank you, thank you. Oh boy, these mosquitoes are getting bad out here. Bumblebee says, intermittent reinforcement. Yes. I think a lot of people say that term, but they don't really understand what it is. Think Worlds will ever be held in Canada. That's from Natalie. No, I don't think so. There's too many immigration issues, right? All the Europeans would have. The reason why worlds are never held here is because most of the competitors are from Europe, right? And why would they have it here? It'd be a huge pain in the ass for them to get here, rather for them that we have the giant pain in the ass of going over there, right? Tinfoil hat says e-collar or neck scruff correction for biting. Neither. Neither. Raul Garcia says has love the DIY protection and foundations. Thank you. Oh, we have some mental health here. Hold on, let me just ban him. Good. You don't exist anymore. Bye-bye. All right. Anybody posting any kind of stupid nonsense, you're immediately banned. I don't have time for it. Fear says, I have a 5-month-old German Shepherd. I want to stop her reactivity towards other dogs. Any tips? Yeah, take my reactivity course. It's just that simple. Take my reactivity course. There's no tips. You just run a training system on the dog. Don't do that. Do this. You have a proper training system, the problem goes away. Raul Garcia says, when I did a boogeyman on my dog for the first time, she responded well. A couple of months later, after watching DIY Foundations, she's not responding as well. She's a bull mastiff. Is this common on mastiff dogs? I mean, there's so many things that you could be doing. I don't know, right? There could be so many things, but I mean, typically if you see the performance going like this and then it goes like this, you're doing something that's negatively impacting the performance, right? Maybe you're doing too much. Maybe you're not reinforcing the right behavior enough. There's just so many possibilities. I couldn't possibly answer that over a live. Who was the sable female you had in your most recent video about kennel full power? That's an Erk daughter. We have actually 5 new females in the breeding program. So that's an Erk daughter, and you'll be seeing her shortly. Any thoughts on Chihuahuas? Well, they're little dogs. Not really much, to be honest with you. Like, I don't know. I don't know what you want me to tell you. Jindo Man says, is the World's going to be in Nova Gorica, Slovenia? Yeah, very, like, close to there. I believe it's going to be in a town called Meren, but that is, like, right by Nova Gorica. So, yeah, looking forward to it. I mean, it's not a bad place to be, right? Tinfoil Hat says, you literally had a video on puppy biting that shows a neck scruff correction. I did it, and it worked for me. Well, yeah, for a puppy. I thought you were talking about for an older dog. Yeah, you know, I showed some of what I might do for puppy biting. There's you know, adult biting. I mean, there's a lot of different things you can do, but fundamentally, at the end of the day, if you don't like a behavior, you must punish it. And you must make it clear for the dog what the contingency for the punishment is. And if you do that, you know, people get so caught up in the method, right, instead of in the outcome. And the method really doesn't matter. There's 1,000 ways you can punish a dog. It's really the outcome that matters, right? Nicholas Savard says, I can vouch for the reactivity course. It's awesome. Fear says, I finally ordered, thank you, Nicholas. I finally ordered the magnet ball I always see you use. Awesome, man. Good. Those are fun. Those are great dog toys. I like them. Matt G says, any tips for stopping my dog from crawling during tracking? She seems to get confused why she's getting corrected, and I don't want to create conflict on the track. Yeah, I'm not quite sure what's going on there. If you're in my courses, jump in the group and ask me, and we can get into the nitty gritty of it. Gentleman says, awesome. I grew up in the area of Italy right across from Nova Gorica. Beautiful sights and great food. Awesome. Looking forward to some great food because Croatia last year, I mean, it was fun, but I don't know that the food was great. So hopefully we get a bit of a different experience this time. All right, guys, I'm getting eaten alive by mosquitoes out here. So I'm going to end this live. Hopefully I stimulated some thoughts. And yeah, see you on the next one.